So first of all, thank you guys so much for being here. As mentioned, I am in week 4, day 4 of my new job in an absolute whirlwind, but this is something I wouldn't miss. I had the privilege of being at many summits all over the past few years, and I think these things are important. I learned and grew up in the media world getting a chance to go to these events, and I think they're super important. So I appreciate you guys being here, sending your team, sending your marketers, because this is how we learn and grow as a community. Because if there's one thing when we talk about AI, I think for a lot of time, and I was talking to someone this morning, there are topics where there are certain authorities that appear. Every time I have an issue in brand safety, I'd call Luis DeComo at Unilever. When I think about how I do things in video, I call Jason Acker at Diageo, because I just think he's really advancing, spends his time on this. And I think in certain cases there's been generosity, but it's been more limited. But I think AI has reopened the generosity of the marketing community. I think we're all struggling with the same questions about what will this look like? In many organizations, the marketing function is being asked to lead, compelled to lead, because it's in our wheelhouse. It's not going to be solved by another function and given to us. And I think there's been a new and increased generosity of spirit because we're facing some really big imperatives around it. And I think it really starts with just what's the pace of change we're talking about. So as I look at what's happening over the years, this is, I think, the thing that scares every single senior marketing executive, anyone running a large organization, whether that be an agency, a client, a publisher. But I frame this slide against the point of view of a client. And what I see is just an accelerating train wreck of a problem. As recently as 2023, you're still trying to figure out and understand what AI does. You're probably having that initial conversation with your C-suite, your board. I remember being there being like, hey, this is what generative AI is. This is how it's different than regular AI. And this is what's going to ultimately happen. You know, in the next year, you started thinking about how you'd apply it to business. You started mapping use cases and saying, here are the use cases. If you go on IAB's website, they'll show you 150 different ones just in marketing alone. And that becomes really quite intimidating. Well, what's out there? What should we be doing? You'll also have a lot of governance and controls. You have a lot of markets who want to do things. We get about 100 requests a quarter from marketers around the world, either in my past organization or this organization, trying to figure out what they want to do or having a test with some new partner, with some new idea that we've probably never done before in a place that we really don't know what's going to happen. Then we have to refine and scale use cases. And then the world really starts to change. As fast as 2027, we're faced with a real imperative about integration. And in 2028, that's BAU. So today, the things that are done that by really highly specialized people in really a handful of organizations has to become BAU by 2028. And that's intimidating. So today, I spend millions of dollars to having a large language model custom trained, custom tweaked to be able to perfectly show my product. And in 2028, that has to be a job of a brand manager. And people question, like, is it really going to happen this fast? It is. And I know this because one of my other side hobbies, what I also show up for, is I teach. I was at Columbia University in the graduate school program last week, and in their class, they have created a brand completely from scratch, the positioning, the product, what its purpose is, the actual ads, everything soup to nuts in AI, and they did it in part-time over the period of 6 weeks. And if people can do that, then large-scale companies are going to have to be able to meet this moment. And so that's the course that we're on, and it's going to change absolute everything. When I first started this journey at Mondelez, I had a very simple focus about some use cases I would start on, and I very quickly started building a tool, Ada, and I was like, oh, we're just going to create a tool to produce assets. And very quickly you realize that I was simply like a newspaper company that had discovered the internet and said, I'm just going to publish my newspaper online. That's not what technology does. It rewrites the entire end-to-end. And from now to 2028, entire marketing organizations will be rewritten, the media ecosystem will forever change, and that's what we're going to have happen. And that's a scary change management that we're going to have to meet the moment on. Why is so much going to change? And it's because there's numerous use cases across an organization or enterprise. We could talk about any one of these out here. I put this chart out here. Really, we're going to focus on the first column, and we're here to talk about video. But it's to say that AI is transforming every single part and function of an enterprise in terms of how it creates value for its consumers, how it serves customers, how it serves communities, and how it ultimately creates value for capital markets. Every single part of the enterprise is there. And what I will argue is that marketing has to lead. This isn't to say that marketing will always have the largest value case. We can sit around a boardroom with my peers, and my partners in operations will have huge cases. Obviously, R&D can speak to how they can create entirely new products or formulations with AI. But what I do think marketing has advantage on is the clarity. The clarity on what those use cases are and where they are so big. And so I list out some of the big ones. Content creation testing, which is what we're here to talk about, I think is use case number one. Use case number one for marketers, and we'll talk about why that is and where video fits squarely into it. Media optimization, huge opportunity given the billions of dollars, the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars spent by organizations. Knowledge management, the cumulative knowledge of an organization is often trapped in the little vessels of individuals' laptops, spreadsheets, and Word documents, and not coming together to help make the enterprise more valuable. Consumer care is a huge opportunity where I think we've all experienced AI make a huge difference in how we interact with a company and a brand. Personally, I find it to be a huge step forward in getting sharper every single day. And then just ANC optimization, where I think I am once again inspired by Coca-Cola in terms of what they have done to be able to make more data-driven decisions, and they talk about how sharp it makes them be. But ultimately, I think video is really the priority use case, and here's kind of the why, is first of all, is just the size of it. And what will be interesting is just how much money a company will spend on creative. I kind of talk about it's like 10 to 15% of all advertising consumer promotion spend is in that area, if you live in the CPG world. And we're talking about large organizations. So you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, so it's a massive dig site for improvement. Second is around quality. I believe that AI will consistently improve quality of creative assets. Why? Because over the past few years, we've all seen those lists of what best practices look like on any digital platform, and we've consistently tried to apply most of them. Or a PDP page, when you hire a copywriter to produce that content, does most of the things right. AI always does it right. There are literally, I could give you a checklist of 100 different variables to create a perfect video on YouTube. The truth is, this AI knows there's thousands, some of which we can't even really see, and it will make sure they all happen. And so there's a huge creative quality uplift. And the last thing is just the consumer demands volume. Think how many more assets we're going to have to produce in order to meet the demands of an increasingly more and more platforms and the increasing demands of a consumer for always-on engagement with brands. No longer do we get to produce one hero asset and splinter it off into pieces. There's a need to be posting daily, hourly. Sometimes it feels like by the minute in some of our categories to update consumers across not just 1, 5, 10, but often 20 or 100 different platforms. That demand will only be met with AI being able to fill the gap. Now, what I think is powerful is when you sit down and you talk to a marketer, is what order they put these in. Because I think it will tell you where they're going, what their strategy is, and where the opportunity is to partner. Those who focus on cost first will be trying to eliminate cost and be able to drive it out. And that's a certain playbook that I think gets driven out in the marketplace. How can I reduce cost? Other marketers will care about quality because they'll see it as an opportunity to increase their creative effectiveness and drive higher ROI to build bigger and stronger brands. And others are going to see it be about volume and speed. And they're going to say, hey, it takes us too long to respond to the consumer. We have to be faster. But whatever order you talk to somebody and whatever order they put that, they're showing you their heart and they're showing you their strategy. And each one of these will look a little bit different. And therefore, I think you'll see a divergence in terms of how people win. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. What I want to show you first is also just where we're at in terms of video. So when I was at Mondelez, we produced an award-winning campaign out of Australia. This was about 14 months ago, showing where video capabilities were at. And at the time, it was at the cutting edge. This comes from the Cadbury brand out there, and I just want you to see it. And when I showed it to the college students in Columbia last week, they all had the exact same reaction. That looks so old. And it was only 14 months ago. But I think it's important to realize just how far we've come.
Without volunteers, there'd be no community sport. Every week, rain or shine, volunteers umpire games and sizzle the sausages, and they never ask for anything in return. Cadbury believes there's a glass and a half of generosity in everyone, especially volunteers. So, we brought our brand purpose to life, continuing Cadbury's ongoing support of grassroots sport. Together, partners Ogilvy Australia and technology and design agency Tadar use generative AI to help all Australians celebrate volunteers in a personal way. Give a cheer to a volunteer, a generative AI platform that lets anyone create a film about a volunteer who matters to them. Each personalised story of thanks features real details from the volunteer's life, and the star, a fully 3D animated version of the volunteer brought to life based on just their photograph. The platform captures each character's unique traits with image prompt adapters and GPT vision. The AI crafts a story using inputs from the user, creating an experience with never-before-seen levels of hyper-personalisation, including backgrounds and other details in every image. Stable video diffusion animates environments that reflect the volunteer's story. Combining comfy UI with Unity, Ogilvy and Tadar transformed complex AI processes into a user-friendly, scalable solution on AWS. Ambassadors like Patty Mills and Emma McKeon made films to support volunteers who mattered to them. And the tool drove traffic to the Cadbury website, growing dairy milk brand salience and relevance. And the audience loved it. This unique blend of technology and humanity connected Cadbury to its core consumers at the heartland of the Australian community.
Beautiful, but a relic. I mean, a relic and an artifact of a point in time that I think we'll point back to. And at the time, it was like, we created Pixar-level animation. We're so cool. Before, you had to hire an animator, you had people submit it, then you have someone kind of sketch it out. That idea wouldn't have been possible. And that was the bleeding edge. Now what I think you see is a bunch of companies coming in and being able to do very specific LLM things. And I think whether you're looking at a Google VO3 or you're looking at Brightline, many of the different partners in this space, they all have something that they do well. I think it's just, I'm gonna show you one from Runway, which is a company that caught my attention. And I think you'll kind of see where they have a trick in certain things that they're able to do specially. No one, I think, has been able to do all of it. People are doing some work in M&A to try and build capability, chasing, all of a sudden something comes out, someone will try and replicate it, but kind of gives you an idea just how far this has kind of come a little bit. So now marketers are starting to build their own. So I think there's a bunch of people who take, and now you're starting to see some of the most progressive marketers who've leaned into the space early create their own video content, starting out with their products, expanding out in social, but with a clear glide path to creating full commercial content, I'd say as early as the end of Q1 or in the first half of next year. This will show you kind of where this is at. And this gets into the details of like fidelity. Because when you get into this, brand people, we're really sensitive about how our Oreos look. We're really sensitive about how my Neutrogena products look because they're an important part of our iconography and about our distinct brand assets and protecting, those icons and brands that have been left to us. So this gives you a sense of kind of where we're at. You'll see liquids still a huge challenge, as anyone who's ever worked in food photography knows. But this is kind of where you're at in terms of a world of fully AI Oreos. And this is just a complete and perfect replication of an end of a spot. And I can assure you, I could show you both of them side by side and ask you to pick, and it's a 50-50 representation of where these are going to ultimately go. So where are we at today? Last week, my friends at Publicis gave us a snapshot. I'm only going to show a short part of it, but if you would have seen the larger video they posted, generated mainly with AI, you could see just the high level of creative fidelity. So I'm just going to show the first probably 30 to 45 seconds of it so we can see what a cutting edge piece of it looks like, and then talk about where we're going from here. And this is in celebration of their 100th anniversary.
Die wir erlassen. Wir sind nicht gekommen, zu verhandeln, sondern eine Disziplin.
Ladies and gentlemen, Edith Piaf.
Thank you. Mesdames et messieurs, let me tell you a story of resistance and grit. As I was saying, let me tell you the story of a French lion. It began in 1926 in Montmartre, Paris.
I'll let you guys watch the whole video later if you have the interest. It was just, for me, the piece of art that I think is what becomes possible. It's just illustrative of just where we're at creatively when we're at the absolute bleeding edge, and what we can create when we combine different pieces to create an absolutely beautiful piece of film is more of a validation, I think, for those of us who've been working on this for a long period of time. So what's kind of the implication for marketers, publishers, and the broader ecosystem? I think where does this all go and what does this mean for us kind of comes into question. The first is, I think the cost to produce an incremental asset goes to zero. Armed with these new skills and powers, the cost to produce an incremental asset goes to zero. So that unleashes the possibilities for almost infinite level of personalization. The main cost will be in coming up with the great concept and building up some modular. And I think that's a huge unlock as we've continued to move from mass marketing towards more personalized marketing. Second is distinctiveness will become everything. In this new world, it will be more important than ever to be distinctive with your brand. Brands that are not distinctive will ultimately become hazed and unclear as AI continues to distort them, and they won't win. Because everyone will have the amazing production power of the top Fortune 50 company in their phone or in their pocket. But the question will be, what do you do with it and how clear you are? Brands must act now to build their brand fundamentals and make sure they are clearly distinct in consumers' minds, or they risk irrelevance. The third, I think, is divergence in how to win. Today, I think people are naturally moving towards personalization, but I think AI is going to create some splinters and strategies. There are people who are going to use AI to focus on creative quality, those to remove cost, others to help make their DR engines go, but I think you're going to see a bigger divergence in strategy. And I think right now when you have a conversation with marketers about how you think brands grow, you get a fairly consistent answer. But as I look around the corner and I think about what the next 5 years go, I think CMOs are starting to diverge. I hear it in the little words of speeches in A&A Masters. I hear it in the private conversations over dinner, and I hear it as they talking about and building their plans for the future where they will distort resources. The world will look much more different, and there will be different ways to go out and win. And I think there's going to be an imperative on the CMO's office to think about what those things look like and bring that to bear. The next is, I always get asked about, won't AI wipe out agencies? No. I think that creative talent and the people who can come up with true brand building ideas and creative platforms become more important than ever. And most of those talented people live within the four walls of an ad agency today. And they live there because that's where they love to be. That's the right culture for them. And when you bring them into a large organization, they're not as effective in terms of what they do. But I think that talent, and it might take different shapes. They might be agency people co-locating inside a client's office. They might be fully at a different agency. Some people will experiment to bring them in, But I think that talent is really important. And I, for one, think that agencies will only become more important over the next 3 to 5 years, and particularly those people who do it. And then the last thing is, I just think there's a huge acceleration of what we're here to talk about. Armed with an unbelievable ability to produce personalized content, why would you settle for a linear television mass model? Yes, I think there are some messages, as I think at it from a comms planning standpoint, that I will want to deliver at scale and that people have a common experience. But I think a lot of unlocking growth will come from my ability to be individually personalized, to learn from every single impression. I think in that CTV will play a huge role because we'll know in a feedback loop, did someone change the channel? Were they just not my target, or did I just tell the wrong story? And that feedback loop will make every asset we produce that much better and that much stronger. So in sum, the world is changing. In fact, everything's changing, and we have 3 years to do it. Because if you don't do it in the next 3 years, you risk irrelevance. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jon. Questions for Jon? Right over here. Please tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Molly Leffler. I work at Discover. I think it's especially in FinServ, it's been an uphill battle to get AI worked in. And I do love that you kind of mentioned distinctiveness. How do you see an AI-like creative model working with, especially like in a FinServ category where the distinctiveness is kind of through different talent, celebrity talent? How, knowing that that's kind of a hot button issue in Hollywood and knowing that we rely on that talent a lot, how does AI work into the creative still?
Yeah, so I think there's a few inspiring examples to go with that. I would point you toward Shadow Khan Your Ad, which was done by Cadbury India, which was a famous work we did with celebrity where it was actually the celebrity opted into it because it's the most effective way. Essentially, he produces a common thing and he references local store shop and keepers. So I think that will be a part of how that ultimately comes together. I think that there will also be, there's a wide volume of work that comes in. And in the fin service business, you obviously have the volume of work that needs to be done based on to drive the last mile of performance. I think where AI will make things possible is on the top half. What is the consumer experience you can create for people that otherwise without AI just couldn't be true? And so I don't think you're going to get rid of celebrities. I think you'll continue to have them, but what are you going to build around it? I like the runway video example where you see the ball change or things like that. What will unlock in terms of creativity that otherwise would have been too cost prohibitive, things like that, or just be more efficient with celebrities' time? Because as you know, the second you have them walk on set, wow, like that clock is ticking and you really hear it. I think what will also happen though is what will be the impact of celebrities in the future and how will that play out is an interesting question. Will people have virtual celebrity? Whatever? I don't really get into that, but I think it comes back to the creative platform. And like I said, I'm new into my role and I've lived inside the world of Mondelez for 8.5 years. And I'm very much I realized I was rich. I was really rich. I had amazing marketers who would produce beautiful creative platforms for all those brands, like Oreo, Cadbury, et cetera. And I'm working on rebuilding that over in my new role. And some of our brands have excellent ones, but other ones are still, finding themselves. And so I think AI will really help as you get to a clear creative platform. And again, I just think that becomes more important than ever because if you don't have great creative platform, you'll pay for it in media frequency. So you either have one or two things. You either have great creative or you pay for it by just having to spend that much more in media, that much more in frequency. And I think categories, my hope is that the celebrity or the muse is not a substitute for a creative platform. And it's been a long time since I worked in fintech. It was like 7 and 08 since I did Visa work. But I think creative platforms are what's been at the heart of it, whether it's Priceless Go, the work you guys have done at Discovery as well, like that will be what fuels the growth more than it will be of celebrity.
Okay, Tyler?
Hi, Tyler Goldberg, Assembly Global. Literally yesterday, McDonald's pulled down this AI-generated ad. Do you think because there is this, I think, human nature to gang up on new technology, do you think there's a brand safety risk to AI that is sort of more intense than human-generated ads?
I think they pulled down that ad because I was showing to someone this morning. I think they pulled down the ad because the creative wasn't good. Whether it was produced by AI or not, I think is irrelevant to the decision. I think you have to have great creative, and AI won't compensate for that. I think to your point, you have to be, as we engage with the new technology and new experiences, there is a certain level of apprehension to that. But I ask you, what is the real difference between the CGI created Oreo and the AI created Oreo? And I tell you, they're both equally delicious. I've tried both.
Hi, Dave Mattson from Nomology. What is your take on how well AI will be able to do conceptual work, really smart, original stuff? Like I'm thinking back to Ed McCabe doing the guy sitting in the chair with the speaker blowing his hair and his martini, you know, stuff like that. That was iconic and, you know.
I still believe in the humanity for this. I think those tools help people, but I mean, built end-to-end tools that come up with concepts, none of them were ever off the box shelf, like ready to go. Do I think those tools can help sharpen concepts? I think it's going to be a while, and that kind of goes back to my point where it's like, I believe in the talent. I believe in the talent, and I believe that's a human. Because I have yet to create, in one of my first weeks, I got to sit on global agency reviews, which is just a gift in that you have unbelievably talented people bring you brilliant ideas for your brands. And that's like a gift. And I can just tell you, I have not seen AI be able to do what some of the brilliant people who walk through that door showed me. And will it ever? Yes. The question is on what timeline and everything else, but over the next 3 to 5 years, I don't see it. But I think that's one of the hardest pieces to replicate. I think that's one of the hardest pieces to replicate. And I don't invest my time in it, let's put it that way, because there's already brilliant humans who do it brilliantly well.
Jon, you talked about the divergence of the CMO in coming years.
Yeah?
Give us, throw some people out here. Let's tell everybody here what the attributes are of the CMOs that make it in this new AI world versus those that struggle.
Well, I don't know if it's make it or struggle. I just think divergence of strategy. So I don't think it's, but here's what I'd say is, I think if we sat all CMOs down, I mean, one thing that's unique about the marketing position, I would say, is a CMO's roles and responsibilities from one company to another are totally different. I think CFO's roles from one company to another look more similar, and CMO roles are more divergent. What I think is if we sat down a bunch of CMOs and we said, what's really going to be important over the next few years, you would get similar answers over the last 2 to 3 years. Like, how did you win the last 5 years? Okay, well, we focused on first-party data. We had media and creative in sync. We were running big data model. Those things would be true. But then when I ask people, how do you win the next 10 years? And that answer is a lot more divergent than what I think it has been historically. And so I think that there's just more varied approaches to it. All of them can be right. But what I think is interesting is you're seeing more sharper strategy from CMOs' offices, and how they believe brands grow is becoming less homogeneous. And I think that's good, because there should be a difference. Jon Halvorson at Nike should care a lot about what people are wearing in the metaverse and what people are wearing in virtual worlds. Jon Halvorson at Mondelez did not care so much because you weren't eating anything. And so I think that is a super important piece, and I think people are distorting resources. If you tell me you want to win in culture, then I should see strong social listening capability, rapid content production, and man, your marketing team, they better dress really cool, all right? They better not dress like me. They should look cool, should look like my wife. They should be cool, and they should be smart, and it'd be awesome, all right? But if you tell me that, Mondelez's, past was on creative storytelling, so what were we good at? AI-generated content, programmatic, our ability to deliver that to a very personalized level. There was a distortion there. I at Kenvue am in the early stages of figuring out what our strategy is. But I can tell you there's not going to be the ability to just copy and paste. And I think there'll be greater divergence. And I think people's ability to have good strategy and then execute it will be a much bigger differentiation, because you cannot copy and paste someone else's playbook. People's situations are too different. The capabilities are too broad. And you can't try and be good at everything. There's too many things at digital. I mean, think about like the wide spectrum of digital, of things we have. We have search, we have video, I mean, just look at the insider lineup. You cover almost every single topic, social, influencers, everything else. You show me the person who's brilliant at all of those things. I would love to hire them. Please show me who they are. But I think there's core areas of expertise and distortions. And so you need to distort your resources, because if you try and be good at everything, you will be mediocre to terrible. And so the real question is, what will you be great at and what will you choose to suck at intentionally? Like, I will be bad. We don't care. And that, I just think, is required. And in the past, there were a tight enough set of capabilities, we could all sit down and look at our Gartner wheel and be like, oh, we're a little off, we're gonna work on everything. Like, it's over. No one has enough resources, enough people to be brilliant at everything. So there will be greater distortion. And I think CMOs realize that, and they are making bigger, bolder choices. And AI will help accelerate those choices. AI is not a thing to be good at, but it will be applied in the disciplines you choose to pursue. It is a tool.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool.
Yep. Thanks, John. I really loved the speech. One question, you touched on, oh, by the way, Naveen of CMO at Churches, you touched on like building the capabilities and what we got to go do. How are you thinking about whether your partners, your agency partners, creative and media, are ready to partner with you on this?
I think a lot of it is just the discussion, you know, and I've been on that. I think the key thing is a very honest discussion, whether it was in my past context at Baudelaise, or certainly you don't go through an agency review these days without seeing a lot of different tools, but it's an honest discussion of what are we going to do and what is your aspiration? And again, it helps to know, if you know where you're going and you're clear on your ambition and your strategy, then I think it becomes clear who can help you get there. When you lack that, then I think you're a sucker and you'll fall for anything. And so it's very important as clients approach reviews or partners or things like that, they be clear on their strategy, because if you're not, man, there are some very persuasive people who have some strong points of view, and you'll go, well, that sounds good. And then you go to the next meeting, you go, well, that sounds good. And you go to the third meeting, you're like, well, that sounds good. You've got to have clarity on that. And I think broadly, we as marketers are lucky, because there is a lot of agencies, both big and small, and there's a lot of talented people. But what's important is finding the people who are just like, you have a cultural connection with too, and who are willing to go with you on that journey. And I think you find a bond, you get in a rhythm around it. And you hit a microphone a lot like a punching bag. So. All right, thank you all so much, I appreciated it.
Jon Halvorson, thank you so much.